Which one of these characters or their constellations you should get for free from the newest Prosperous Relationships event? Well, there's a lot of really good and interesting options here, so this video will go through all of them. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Ubisoft's Might and Magic Era of Chaos, an army battle RPG that features a massive story campaign, fast-paced duels, and many other activities you can join in. And currently, there's Lucky Draw where you can win Ubisoft's games, but there's also many participation prizes as well, and all you need to do is download the game by using my link in the description, then log into it and find out what your user ID is, and then finally, just submit your user ID and claim your ticket for a chance to win Ubisoft's $300 luck pack. Now, the other event is Heroes Voting, where you decide which of the 8 heroes is going to be the champion. Just log in with your user ID to start voting, but make sure to come back often because there's a total of 3 stages that each last 3 days, and you can get rewards for joining every stage. In fact, 30 lucky winners will get a limited edition gift box, and the more you vote, the easier it is to win. But make sure to join these events as soon as possible because there is a deadline, and to get started, just use my links in the description. More importantly, you'll also help support my channel, so check out Might and Magic Era of Chaos today. Look, it's pretty clear Ningguang is going to get a bit of a special treatment here because she's one of the few characters who is getting her own alternative costume completely for free, so it's going to be hard not to talk about her new skin's power level. But in all seriousness, Ningguang is an absolute powerhouse as long as you understand that she does need geo-resonance and a lot of investment to see her dish out big numbers, since there's no vaporize or melt to help you with boosting the damage. But the thing is, when it comes to her constellations, the second one is arguably the most important upgrade for her because, well, geo-constructs can sometimes be annoying to deal with when they randomly get destroyed from wrong placement, so getting a second chance to redeploy is great, and at the same time, this also means you get double the amount of elemental particles, not to mention the fact it's easier to maintain her passive, which requires you to walk through the shield to get the geo bonus damage. Also, at C2, she becomes a really good battery for the other Geo teammates like Noelle or Zhongli, so it's easier to use her as a sub-damage dealer who just unloads her whole kit for massive damage, while at the same time, she then acts as an energy supplier for other Geo characters. Now, there aren't really any popular meta teams used with her in the Abyss, but with high levels of investment, and even unlocking something like her third or last constellations really lets you push for more damage, and ends up as a suitable teammate you can use to get all the stars on the current cycle. So if you're thinking of beefing up your Geo pool of characters, getting her or her important constellations can be a good choice. Chongyun isn't someone you see show up in videos that often, but with recent Shenhe's arrival, he does seem to be getting a lot more attention than usual. And it's not just the fact his auntie is a superstar in the Genshin community, but I think it has to do more with how unusual Chongyun is when compared to the rest of these 4-star characters, and how this became more apparent with both Shenhe and Yun Jin's releases. Now, just because I say he's unusual doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, but here's the thing, he actually brings unique value to the table that no one else can do. So the biggest thing about him is the cryo infusion he provides for any active character from his elemental skill, with a really nice 10% resistance shred to cryo from the passive, and he is actually one of the most effective characters you can bring to the Abyss when dealing with Hydro and Electro Heralds. In fact, the latest Abyss cycle has a couple of Hydro Heralds waiting for you at the second half of the chamber, and they are really annoying to deal with without proper cryo application. So with Chongyun, he's a godsend if you want to take out the Herald's armor quickly. Now, when looking at his constellations, by far his best one is C2 because there's no one else in the game besides Final Constellation Raiden who can reduce your team's cooldowns, although it's not always something that you'll need, and if that's the case, he gets good power bumps at his third and final constellations. Oh, and keep in mind he's actually one of few Claymore users who work best with Sacrificial Greatsword, since not only he gets to generate more particles for himself and the team, but he can reset the field and activate the cryo resistance shred, as well as maintain the cryo infusion for longer periods of time when you're relying on it. And let's not forget that his burst actually deals a ton of damage when it's melted. Basically, Chongyun is someone who has a unique method of providing cryo infusion, can decrease the team's cooldowns at C2, and is amazing when dealing with Herald shields. And of course, even if people forgot about it, he can still be used in one of the strongest national team comps instead of Raiden or Sucrose. I think that the best way to describe Yenfei would be that she's a beginner-friendly character that also becomes relevant in the late game. See, the thing about her is that because she's from the pyro element, she can melt, vaporize, and even overload any of her attacks, which is pretty awesome for anyone who wants to build various types of teams, but that also comes with some drawbacks because she does want to use charge attacks, and those can leave you exposed with an empty stamina bar. Which is why when we talk about her constellations, if you want to use her as your main damage dealer with charged attacks, getting that C1 is almost crucial to have and will make your life easier, especially if you go into time challenges. But one thing that not a lot of people talk about is her 4th constellation, which will grant a massive pyro shield after Yanfei uses her burst, and it will stay around for 15 seconds on any character you swap to. Now, this is actually a legit way you can start using Yanfei as a shield character for Hu Tao's teams, because with an Animo teammate, Yanfei can provide the pyro replication for the Viridescent Venereer activation and give Hu Tao a chunky shield so she can spam her charge attacks. So, to put it simply, Yenfe is definitely someone that benefits a lot from constellations, especially if you have Hu Tao and want to bring an alternative shielder into your team, but at the same time, you can also use Yenfe as a good pyro damage dealer. What more could be said about Xingqiu that hasn't been repeated over and over again by basically any other content creator? This guy is an absolute pillar in so many team builds that it's not even funny, but it's not just his utility that enables teams like Hu Tao's Walnut or National or even Freeze comps, it's the damage output he's able to provide on top of some decent healing and defense. And sure, some may argue that his full potential lies behind the fully refined sacrificial sword, but you can just build more energy recharge on him instead of more damage, and eventually, once you get more constellations on him, things become way more easier with his energy-hungry playstyle. In fact, since Emblem of Severed Feet Domain is considered to be the best place to spend your resin efficiently, for widely applicable artifacts you can get from there, it's even easier to hit that energy recharge he needs. But going back to his constellations, every single one of them is actually a great upgrade, especially if you're using him in the Abyss, but I would say that a major breaking point has to be the 2nd constellation, which might not seem like a big deal when his burst gets extended by 3 seconds and enemies' hydro resistance is reduced by 15%. However, this gives a major spike in performance because it just makes the burst stronger in basically any team rotation. And if you do have the chance to get him from this event as a final constellation, then it's going to be pretty huge for any teammate who relies on vaporizing from his hydro application, since it will now be easier to cause reactions with characters like Hu Tao, Yenfei, Klee, and few more, and he will generate more energy. Honestly, if all you care about is having a core team member fully decked out, then getting any of these constellations is a good decision. There's a running gag in the community that almost each new update is a Xiangling update, and that's because 2 major recent additions to the game have really helped people build her more easily, and it's the catch you can obtain from fishing and the Emblem of Severed Fate 4 set, which are both extremely rewarding for her playstyle. Still, if you've seen any of my videos about this chef, her performance does heavily depend on how well you manage her energy recharge because of her expensive burst cost, since you want to use Pyronado off cooldown for that insane damage potential it can offer, so as long as you can solve this problem, she will shine in popular meta teams like National, Reverse Melt, and International comps. Now, when you look at her constellations, the biggest upgrade for her is going to be the 4th constellation, which extends the burst duration by 40%, which is basically 4 extra seconds that will allow her to deliver more burst damage, but at the same time, it's also easier to manage her rotation visually when only 6 seconds are left to restart the burst. However, she does have an underwhelming upgrade that's below the 4th one, and it's the 2nd constellation, which is more or less useless and may become relevant in the future with new characters, but for now, it's just something you need to bypass in order to get to the good stuff. And obviously, the rest of the constellations, especially the 1st, 3rd, and last one, give a nice chunky upgrade for her own pyro damage, and becomes even more relevant if you use her in mono pyro or with other heavy pyro damage dealers. It's sad to say this, but Xinyan is definitely the underdog of Genshin, even if she did recently have an appearance in one of the major update events. It's not that she's bad, since every character is useful in the game, but it more has to do with how you can actually use her, because she's a physical damage dealer that can also act as a support, while the pyro damage is more or less there to serve as a utility than anything else. But recently, with Yun Jin's release, she did gain a bit of attention, since when you look at her entire kit, she can boost physical damage by 15% when her shield is active, and then her 4th constellation also reduces physical resistance by 15% when the enemy gets hit by the shield, essentially turning her into a really decent support for any teams that focus on physical damage, as long as you understand that she can mess with superconducts, so you need to swap to her after first triggering that reaction. But what's cool about using her as a support is that since all of her damage comes from the burst, at 2nd constellation you can just build critical damage without considering critical rate and then end up with these beautiful fireworks she's able to put out, which is definitely a thing you can do with physical damage teams. And as for her final constellation, it's kind of like the same situation as with Noelle. This is where she can start dealing some serious damage by herself, but it requires so much investment to make it work for the Abyss that it's better to just use her as a support. But for world exploration, well, you don't even need that constellation, as you can already take care of anyone, even at C0. You know how everyone at one point used to say Electro was bad? Well, just take a look at Beidou, who doesn't care about her element and just provides pure, raw damage without any questions asked. And that's basically her best selling point. Her burst is so good that it doesn't matter if you're causing any kind of reactions, because as long as there's at least 2 targets available for the lightning to jump around, you'll see numbers like these all the time. Now what you're looking at here is Beidou with all constellations unlocked, but let's be honest here, the biggest jump in power she gets is at the 2nd constellation, and it's arguably the most important one you need if you want to completely take advantage of her burst, since the jumping between targets can return back to the initial monster, which means the damage grows insanely high with this constellation. So if you have a C1 Beidou, this is hands down the best upgrade you can get for her to start abusing the burst damage. And obviously, if you have a good reaction time, then her elemental skill also offers a significant chunk of damage, not to mention the fact she gets good amount of elemental particles with a perfect counter. Most importantly, Beidou is almost essential for Taser team comps, which have been around for a long time now, and this popular meta team comp still performs well even in the latest Abyss, thanks to Beidou's burst and shield. But keep in mind, to have this type of performance, you need to put in the resources to see the results, so she will require a certain level of investment. Imagine releasing a new character and then making them available for free almost immediately. Well, that's the choice miHoYo went with, and Yun Jin is the new shiny unit you can get for free, or gain more of her constellations if you choose to do so. And as of making this video, it's been a couple of weeks since she got released, which means she's not fully figured out when compared to someone like Xingqiu or Xiangling, but as of now, she does work really well with Yoimiya as a damage booster, and she's becoming almost a staple for fast attacking physical damage dealers like Zhongli or Fischl. It's also worth mentioning that you can build her pretty much with just a Favonius Lance or prototype Star Glitter, then slap some defense artifacts with a mix of energy recharge, and she functions in nearly any team comp without any kind of problems. And as someone who only has her first 2 constellations unlocked, all I can say is that right now, she feels pretty much complete at C0, and most of the performance increases she gets are almost evenly split between all of the constellations, maybe besides the 5th one if you don't plan on building her as a sub damage dealer, so keep this in mind if you decide to go for an upgrade. There's a lot of interesting choices here, and I'm going to be honest with you. If you truly care about clearing the Abyss bi-weekly, then getting Xingqiu, Xiangling, or Beidou is probably the easiest choice. Just remember, you can clear with almost any team that has proper synergy and strong artifacts, but of course, the reality is, the best choice is going to be the one that benefits your account the most, since looking at what teams you're building or trying to improve upon is the best way to make the decision. But for the sake of keeping things simple, here's the major constellation upgrades that I believe offer the best spike in power for the characters. Just keep in mind that when it comes to Yun Jin, I'm still not comfortable enough recommending which constellation is your best one, as it takes a lot more time to figure out these things. Finally, if you made this far into the video, I will personally go for Yenfei's constellation to unlock her shield because, well, I'm a content creator, so hopefully I can see for myself just how good the shield is going to be for Hu Tao's team comp, but at the same time, I also feel like it's an exciting upgrade for Yanfei to go from the usual damage dealer route to an actual shielder. But let me know in the comments which free 4-star character you're going to go with from this event, and I hope you found this video useful. You can always help me out by subscribing to the channel and pressing that like button. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you soon.